What is up, everyone? Welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're going to talk about 7 myths of airline pilots that you might believe. And if I don't get to one of your myths that might be in question, drop it down in the comment down below or reach out to me on DMs, Fly with Garrett on Instagram. So let's get into it with myth number 1. That autopilot does all the work and that we just take off and land. And that honestly couldn't be furthest from the truth. Although autopilot is a sophisticated assistant, it's a great tool up in the flight deck and it significantly reduces the workload for pilots, yes. However, we also have to make sure that we're putting in the right inputs for autopilot, and then we're constantly monitoring the aircraft at all times and monitoring that the autopilot is doing exactly as it was told. Up at cruise, whenever autopilot is on, like I said, we're always monitoring aircraft systems. Also, we're talking to air traffic control, we're monitoring weather. Weather can change at any point in time, especially some of these destinations out in the Caribbean. I just had it the other day. We were going into Bermuda. It looked absolutely beautiful. It was severe clear, as we call it, not a cloud in the sky. And then all of a sudden, a pop-up thunderstorm. We're at max crosswind limitations. We have to start holding. So things can change in the blink of an eye, especially out there in the Bermuda Triangle. But we are monitoring things at all times. Myth number 2 is that pilots live this jet set lifestyle, and really that's not true unless you're super senior and have these exotic destination trips all the time, which sometimes people do. Even though I was just speaking about going to Bermuda this last week, I had 4 of those trips in a row, and they can definitely add up. These quick turns where it's just going to Bermuda and back, I'm waking up at 4:30 in the morning and I'm not getting home until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Yes, it's a 12-hour day. It's not the end of the world, but time after time after time, they kind of add up and take a toll on your body. A lot of people are dealing with jet lag. I also do these red-eye flights a lot where it's one leg out to Mexico City, you spend 24 hours there, and then you fly a red-eye back. So I'm landing back here at John F. Kennedy Airport at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I was up all night, and it all kind of just depends on if you nap the night before or if you sleep whenever you get in at, I land at 6, I'm home at 9. What am I gonna sleep the whole day and then really mess up the schedule for the next few days? So it's not always this beautiful, glamorous lifestyle, especially whenever you're away from home and you're away from family, friends, your routine. So I do speak about, how this is the greatest job in the world, and it really is, especially if you can set your schedule up, which I'm very fortunate enough so early in my career to have a pretty beautiful schedule that it does work out in my favor a lot of the time. But it's not this exotic destination 24/7, just one quick easy flight and you're hanging out on the beach for 36 hours. Myth number 3 is that pilots are just button pressers, and this is definitely not true. Although we do have a lot of buttons up in the flight deck, and we use things like the autopilot and the modern flight decks to help us and reduce the workload. But like I said, we're always monitoring weather, the systems, and we have to know extensive knowledge about each and every aircraft that we fly. And at the airlines here in the United States, you can only fly one airplane at a time, and you need something called a type rating for each aircraft that you fly. Anything over 12,500 pounds here in the US requires a type rating. So it's extensive training that you go through, so you know all about the systems, all the numbers, the weights, tons of different knowledge about each aircraft. So if things do ever go wrong, we're there to intervene and take away that technology and just be airline pilots with knowledge to make these critical decisions during critical phases of flight. Myth number 4 is that any pilot can fly any airplane. Like I just spoke about in the previous myth, you need to be type rated for each aircraft that you fly here in the US, anything over 12,500 pounds. And there's reasoning behind that, and there's really good reasoning. I, as a 737 first officer, can't go and fly a 777. Although the flight decks are kind of similar and the systems are kind of similar, the weights, all the numbers that you need to know about that aircraft, the systems, although they can kind of run in parallel, the weights are completely different. It's like landing, 8 feet off the ground versus 30 feet off the ground. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's definitely different. The handling characteristics, the numbers, everything involved is drastically different from each airplane. And especially if I were to go over from a Boeing to an Airbus, things are way different. One thing I will say, my commercial examiner did tell me after I completed my check ride is that, Garrett, now that you're a commercial pilot, you should be able to get in any aircraft and essentially fly it if you really had to. And I believe that to be true, but safely, I don't think that's true. And I would say almost anyone else could say that as well. If I've never flown an Airbus and I get into it, sure, I could probably figure it out, but I don't think I would want someone who's never flown an Airbus before up there just operating flights. And that's why we have these standards and these things called type ratings and only allow us to fly one airplane at a time. Myth number 5 is that pilots only work a few days a month. And that's definitely not true for the majority of the people. We do have an amazing schedule, and I would say pilots have some of the best schedules out there when it comes to, jobs really across the US. And we work about half the month typically for most airline pilots, about 15 days on, 15 days off, typically is how it works out. Now there are some pilots that have jobs outside of being airline pilots, like side hustles, like real estate and so on and so forth. And it allows them and gives them the opportunity to reduce the schedule if able. If the reserve system is super high capacity, meaning we have a lot of reserves, our system allows us to drop trips into open time because they will covered without no hiccups or interruptions in the schedule. So depending on that, if everything aligns and you can drop your schedule down, then that's great. And you can set up a beautiful tons of day off schedule per month. But for the most part, most pilots work about half of the month. Myth number 6 is that pilots are afraid of heights. I will definitely speak from personal experience here that couldn't be further from the truth. I went skydiving when I was out in Dubai, and it was the scariest thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. And I'm a firm believer now that you should never jump out of a perfectly good operating airplane. I don't know what it is. I just did, it's weird actually. I was out in Dubai here recently and I got up in a hot air balloon and I was like, I really just do not enjoy this. Although it's beautiful, there's a sunrise, I just don't like being high above the ground. When you're flying, it's not really a fear for some reason. I'm never scared in an airplane, but jumping out of an airplane or being in a hot air balloon, it's not my thing. Myth number 7, the last and final myth for today's video, is that pilots hook up a lot. I'll be honest, I've been in this industry not that long, a little over 8 years, and I don't see it happen that often. Maybe in the old days where you hear those crazy stories about how, airline pilots were, just these big, hookuppers. That's definitely not a word, but you know what I'm saying. These people that like to sleep around, and I just don't see it in today's age that much. And the older generation definitely saw the divorce rate even higher. Today's generation, people are getting married later. I don't know, the whole difference between the two and why that's happening, but I don't see the hookup culture being as big and as portrayed as the general public likes to say it. But that's just personal experience. I might be completely oblivious to it, and I probably am. I don't do too many overnights, and a lot of the times at most airlines here in the US, pilots and flight attendants don't even stay at the same hotel. So I don't know if the rumor and the myth is that pilots hook up with the general population. I've been in a relationship basically the whole time that I've been an airline pilot, so I don't really dabble in that scene. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you guys want more myths, drop them down below and I'll make sure to answer them, or like I said, slide in to the DMs on Instagram with your questions. It's Fly with Gara. If you guys liked the video, make sure you smash the thumbs up button, subscribe if you're new here, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace.